Howdy ho guys, and welcome to another Bojan vlog. How you all doing? Today, I wanted to take a break from all the entries I've been doing recently about, doing what you love, embracing the pain, all of that good stuff. Of course, that's kind of my main message, but I thought that, I did part 2, and this is basically what this entry is going to be about, but I did part 2 of men versus women, essentially, sexuality. And so in this entry I thought that I would kind of go ahead because I had a recent realization that I thought might be quite interesting. So this is in effect part 3 of my sexuality series, right? It seems that some of you guys, seem to like watching these. Of course, we're all thinking about sex all the time, aren't we? We're all sex fiends secretly, but no. Okay, so in this entry, I'm actually going to talk about something that's based off of an existing concept, which is a concept that was coined, I believe, was coined by Real Social Dynamics, which is, again, if you don't know, they are essentially a group that teaches men how to be confident in themselves in the arena of dating, right? So they have a concept that is called, basically, they identified that the way that women view men is contingent on something they call lover-provider. And what this essentially means is that there are two matrices of behaviors, and I'm kind of making this a bit more complicated than it really is. Really, it's just there are some men that women view as mates, essentially. There are some men that women view as husband material, let's just say, and then there are other men that women view as the kind of daring, hot, sexy, hunk of a man, basically. That's essentially lover provider, described, right? So women view men in these two different ways, right? And this is something that RSD teaches men to. It's a concept that instructors within RSD have talked about, which kind of, the aim is to raise awareness, particularly on the men's side, as to how to approach the whole kind of dating game, right? And so in this entry, I want to kind of present my own repackaging of this concept, right? Because it would seem, from a kind of normal societal paradigm that so we've identified that women have these two differing, let's say, criteria lists when looking at men, right? But men are these simplistic creatures who only want sex, right? All they want is to put a penis in a hole, right? That's all they're looking for. And actually, I'm going to challenge that in this entry, right? And essentially, the concept that I have come up with recently is, whereas with women, it's lover provider. With men, I'm kind of introducing something called, that I have coined, MateCompanion. And I don't know if that's, or companion mate, you could say, I don't know if those terms are that, maybe there are better terms out there, but essentially, what I am calling companion mate is the male equivalent of lover provider for females, right? So, similar to how women view, they have the man, the boyfriend, the husband in their life that they're loyal to, they love with all their heart. But at the same time, you know, there's a double standard essentially, you know. At the same time, there is also, you know, the hot, sexy guy that, you know, the woman wouldn't, the woman wouldn't have any reservations towards sleeping with, like, essentially, right? You know, men have also this double standard dynamic where there is, even though, like, you know, in society, like, we as men, our narrative is that we're sex crazed, right? And that is true, but, like, again, similar to how women have a hot, attractive man they would sleep with, you know, a short-term mating strategy is another kind of term from the dating community. You know, there is also actually another side to this, which is there is the woman also that you would wife up, essentially, and that's the key behind the concept that I'm sharing in this entry. So essentially, you know, like, as men, right, we do focus a lot on sex, and we do look at women heavily, you know, screening out, well, essentially looking for sexual attractiveness, right, sex appeal, right? That's a massive thing for men. But there is also another side to the relationship paradigm for men, right? You know, even as men, we don't go into a relationship just because we're sexually attracted to the women. If anything, or if to the woman, if anything, there's often the sentiment that, like, you know, if a woman is really attractive, and of course I'm massively generalizing here, but, like, I'm kind of, like, illustrating, like, the kind of stereotype that exists around this kind of thing, you know. You know, the stereotype is that, like, women who are attractive are crazy. You know, they are batshit crazy. Because, you know, they're so hot that they've never had to develop a personality, basically. You know, that's the stereotype, right? But, like, you know, there has to be a reason why this kind of a stereotype exists, you know. And, you know, this essentially goes back to, you know, the whole, what I'm saying, which is, like, you know, like, even, like, a woman can be attractive, right? But that doesn't mean that you want to be in a relationship with her, right? If anything, if she's a woman that you found incredibly physically attractive and you got with her primarily because you wanted to bed her, basically, you wanted to fuck her, then, you know, like, you can't really be surprised if she turns out not to be, like, girlfriend material, wife material. So let's kind of deconstruct, you know, the whole kind of relationship paradigm here. So, like, there is the sex component, right? This is true of both men and women. You know, for women, you know, again, like, I urge you to watch my previous 2 parts on this, where I kind of outline essentially how, well, first of all, gender roles, you know, how, like, men and women are expected to behave in society, and also, you know, what men and women are attracted to, you know, in the opposite sex. And so, you know, women, like I said, you know, they are attracted to the idea of a man, you know, who he is, you know, the way that others perceive him, or at least her perception of that. And then, of course, men are attracted to the woman's appearance. And also, to an extent, like, the way that her openness, you know, because, like, but then again, you know, to be fair, you know, you could have, like, really kind of bitchy women, like, at first glance, but they're super hot, and, like, you're almost picturing in your head, like, you know, she's probably not going to be fun to be around, but, or you know, or she's going to be like a doormat, but, like, I'm still fucking, like, you know, I would still do it, you know. But so there's the sex component, but then there is also, like, the love component. You know, in a nutshell, there is the sex component, and then there's the love component, right? There is the sex component, which is, you know, like, full-on attraction, lust. But then there is also the part of the relationship that is based around warmth and love, right? And if you are a conscious male, you will admit to this, or a sensitive male, I should say. You know, like you're not just you don't just look at women for sex. You also look at a woman in terms of like how maternal she is, you know, how supportive she is, how cool she is in terms of like is she secure in herself? You know, will she support me as I go on my own forge? You know, and not basically like become a dead weight or like someone who just complains all the time, you know. And so like there is this dynamic, right? And essentially what I'm trying to do in this entry is to raise awareness. You know, that's all I'm trying to do in this entry, is to raise awareness that, okay, so, you know, with things like real social dynamics, like, you know, they have identified that, yes, you know, women have a double standard. But I'm saying here that men also have a double standard, right? And the reason I'm saying this, you know, the reason why I'm equalizing the playing field against my own team is because I want to spread awareness on it. Or, you know, well, to be honest, it's just an idea I had, you know. I thought like it'd be cool to kind of give an extension on like the RSD like portion that they submitted, you know. So companion mate. So, you know, the mate, you could also say lover, I guess, but like a mate is the hot girl, the HB, you know, the turbo, you know, the one that you want to sleep with, but like have really no intention in like, you know, like doing anything further than that, right? So, you know, this is why a lot of hot girls can't find boyfriends, you know, like it's because of this double standard that also exists for men, right? So like, you know, I remember like, you know, Owen from RSD talking about like how, you know, well, the whole thing with RSD is like, you know, the reason they give this perspective, the reason they present these concepts is because they're trying to teach men to marry these two together. Like the ideal man is one who is seductive, you know, who can adopt the lover frame well, but then is also, you know, a caring person, you know, who is a provider to the woman, right? You know, who supports his woman. And, you know, that's what they're trying to do. And simultaneously, like, you know, with this extension that I'm providing, you know, like it is, well, again, like Owen talks about how, like, you know, if you want to be a cool chick who keeps her man, then like, yes, be attractive, you know, like, yes, be attractive, you know. I think a lot of women have this in society, you know, already. You know, a lot of women already have this, you know. They read Cosmo or whatever it is that they read and look up for, like, probably YouTube. There's like a bajillion, like, sources on YouTube and online, like, on beauty and stuff. But, like, you know, yeah, you know, like, if you want to be a cool chick that keeps her man, you know, like, be sexy, you know, go to gym or whatever, you know. But then, and you know, like make an effort, like physically, but also, you know, be gentle, you know, have a personality, be secure, you know what you want. And effectively what happens is like, there's, I guess, a bit of a balancing in one's, like, you know, sexuality in its entirety, right? Because, like, again, just because we have penises and vaginas doesn't mean that we are comprised entirely, exclusively of penis and vagina, right? So, like, you know, within each of us there is a balance of the masculine and the feminine energy, right? And when it comes to sexuality, it is more polar, right? It is to do with polarity. You know, that is like kind of going to that extreme. But then, in terms of like, you know, love and warmth and like relationship in terms of pair bonding, you know, as opposed to mating, right? You know, the plebeian thing, you could say, you know, as opposed to the primate thing. You know, like, it is more to do with a balancing of each person's sexuality within, right? So, like, a man becomes less aggressive you know, just fucking everything that moves, you know, like just making moves on everything, every single woman he comes across, and kind of like, okay, slowing down and like committing to supporting the woman. You know, this is what all women want, right? And then similarly, like for the woman, it's like becoming less like superficial, essentially, you know, because like when it comes to, and of course when I say superficial, like, I'm not blaming women, you know, this is just how sexuality works, right? For women, like their attraction is primarily physical, like in terms of how a man looks upon a woman. So like she is looking to balance out. Well, she's essentially really focused on her appearance and like things like that, right? And so like it is kind of becoming less superficial and like, you know, like thrill seeking in the sense of like just like throwing yourself into like hedonism basically, and growing a backbone, you know, learning to say no, developing a personality, you know, developing interests, becoming an alpha bitch, you know, I shouldn't say that, but like an alpha female, right? You know, and that's how you keep a man, because like, you know, a man doesn't want to be, from my perspective, right, and from the male perspective, like a man doesn't want to be around a woman for the long term, no matter how hot she is. He might stay, but he'll grow resentment, you know, there'll be a bad taste in his mouth. You know, who like, she's super hot, but like she has no boundaries, like she has no interests, she has no opinions of her own, you know, that kind of thing. And all she is like a sex doll, basically. You know, like she's like a flower that people pick petals off of continuously. So again, you know, the reason I am sharing this is because, you know, there is a tendency, you know, for men and women to use each other. You know, that's the kind of dark side of relationships, is that like they can become destructive, you know, like, so, you know, the man can become like, can essentially deprive a woman of her, can like, you know, just take a woman's sexuality and then just leave and then just dump her to the side, right? That's what men do. And women can become like mass manipulators, basically. Like they're stringing men along with like the unspoken promise of sex, you know, flirtation, but then like they're never going to give it up, you know, and they're only doing it so that the men will give them favors, basically, right? And so this is how men and women use each other. This is how men and women hurt each other. And so when we begin to build awareness around why we do this, why we ourselves as men and women do this, and then why the opposite sex does what they do, then like we can start to like lift ourselves out of dysfunction. Because okay, the thing is, like, you know, like you could say that there are extremists on both ends. Like there are the people who are like, you know, they're the players, right? For example, you know, they're just like pussy. I don't know, fuck relationships, just chase the fucking pussy, man. You know, just slay him. That's all that matters, right? And then, like, you know, there are the sluts, quote unquote. You know, then on the other side of the extreme, there are the squares. You know, like squares. there are like, you know, the people who are like, you know, one true love. You know, like soulmates, twin flames, that kind of thing. And like, you know, monogamy. You know, because that is when, you know, that is all that really matters, you know. And like, the thing those people, those extremists miss is that, like, again, you know, this is, I've talked about this a lot, you know, this isn't just about spirituality, this is like life in general. Like, life is all about contrast. It's all about black and white. It's all about paradox, right? You know, or rather like seemingly irreconcilable poles or extremes, right? And, you know, what we need to do is to be able to like adopt an and consciousness type of a mentality and begin to like, you know, like not take ideas to the extreme. Like, yes, ideas are contradictory. Yes, they all exist, right? But that doesn't mean that like we always have to be at the mercy of the clash, right? You can be focused on sex, right? But you could also be focused on having a great, like, committed relationship, right? And this is essentially the take home of this entry. You know, again, like, the kind of disclaimer that I forgot to mention at the beginning of this entry was, like, you know, I mentioned it in my previous entry, like, I'm not someone who has a massive amount of experience, like, very little, actually, you know. Again, I've only been with, like, 3 or 4 girls my whole life. You know, I'm 28 now. I've only really had sex with one girl, you know, like proper sex, right? But like, you know, I fooled around with the other ones I've been with to some degree. But like, you know, and so like I'm not an expert. I'm nowhere near. Got really dark all of a sudden. I'm nowhere near an expert, but like this is what I'm proposing, right? You know, essentially I'm proposing polyamory. You know, this isn't anything new, but essentially polyamory is when, you know, again, like, it's not new, like, you know, it's not a new idea, so like anyone watching this probably knows what it is already, but like essentially, like, what I'm proposing is like, we are torn between, should I be in a monogamous relationship, or should I keep myself open and like, you know, continue to like garner new experiences, right? And like, again, there are arguments for both sides, right? There are people willing to go to the grave for what they believe in, but like, I propose that, like, well, the idea of polyamory is like, you have one person that you are committed to, right? Because you can't, you know, I sometimes fall into a trap with this myself, but like, it's like, you can't expect to just meet loads of different people and have no like deep connected relationships that have been, you know, nurtured for a long time and expect to be happy, because like, you can only ever be like, form like a really, really fulfilling relationship with people when you've been around them and you commit to them, right? And so like, all of the players out there, all of the sluts, right, you know, like, what they are lacking but might not necessarily be willing to admit to is that like, they lack intimacy, you know, like, they don't have that love, you know, and like, they'll be probably like, who cares about fucking love? Love is a fucking legend anyway. Fuck love. It's a piece of shit, you know. The world isn't loving. And it's like, well, but okay, but are you really just hurt? You know, are you really just like starving for love? You know, and like, maybe I think women, you know, again, I'm stereotyping, I'm generalizing, but like, I think maybe women are slightly better in this regard because they can just kind of admit to this kind of thing half the time. But like, men, it's a bit more difficult. But having said that, like, I think that we're kind of moving into quite a progressive era where, like, you know, men are owning their sensitivity, and women are also breaking free from like the very thing that feminism has been fighting, which is powerlessness, right? You know, women are fighting for their right to have power, and men are fighting for their right to have sensitivity, right? As I've mentioned in previous entries. But yeah, so, you know, that's essentially my proposition, like, you know, because like, it's funny because I had a dream, right? And this is a bit personal, but like, who cares? I'll share it. It's not really a big deal, like, but yeah, I had a dream, and basically I dreamt about my ex, and I dream about her periodically. I can't believe I'm admitting this on YouTube, but like, here you go. You know, this is the kind of person I am now. Like, I don't feel like the need to hide anything anymore. Of course, like, never say never. You know, like, I'm not perfect, but like, I'm not gonna name any names or anything. But like, you know, like, basically, yeah, I dreamt of my ex recently, and it's like, within that dream, I reached an epiphany, which is like, well, basically what happened was like, we kind of got back together in a dream, But then also, like, there was a freedom that, there was kind of an agreement that I could then continue to, like, if I had, like, a sexual itch, I could go and scratch it, basically. And that is essentially polyamory, right? And, like, I woke up from a dream and I felt so free, because the demons that I had been fighting with regards to, you know, relationships and sexuality were, like, that, like, I had to give up, you know, that relationship and other relationships because, or yeah, you know, like, basically I was torn between, like, okay, well, I'm sexually curious, you know, like, I want to try lots of different sexual experiences with different people, you know, but at the same time, like, you know, I do love the people that I get into relationships with. I do, you know, and, you know, it was hard to break up with my ex, for example. You know, it was really, really hard because, like, I had to go against those feelings because I was like, you know, I can't be with her because, you know, I want more sexual freedom, right, you know. And, like, my ex wasn't fulfilling me in that way. But, like, the thing is, like, you need both. You know, I know this is very controversial. This is very, very controversial. And, like, I don't mean any offense or anything, really. Like, if anyone watches this and, like, you know, they disagree, or, like, you know, they find what I'm saying offensive, then, like, I apologize. You can also voice whatever it is you want. If you want to say something to me, then, like, you know, I'd gladly listen to what you have to say. But, like, the thing is, we have to realize that, like, there is both within us, right? You know, because there are plenty of examples of people in the world who play the field, but they suffer from a lack of intimacy, you know, and they're, like, jaded as fuck, you know, and all of that stuff. And then there are people who are in committed relationships, but, like, half the time they end up with, you know, one partner cheating on the other one, and it's like, well, okay, so we have identified from these, like, failure cases, let's just say, that, like, we have a drive to pair bond, and we have a drive to undergo sexual exploration, you know. And both of those drives are valid, right? And so, like, the thing that I'm proposing is that we perhaps, you know, essentially, like, this is kind of like me, like, you know, trying to sell polyamory, which is funny because I've never been in a polyamorous relationship. I don't know if I'm mature enough to be in a polyamorous relationship, but I think if I were to give it a go, which, like, to be honest, I don't ever see myself being in, like, a purely monogamous relationship anymore. Like, I would be out of there, honestly. Like, to be honest with you, I don't think I could ever be in a monogamous relationship, like, again. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to become, like, a PUA. You know, like, you know, I'm not going to become, like, one of these, like, crazy pickup guys who, like, sleep with 1,000 women. Okay, cool, bro. You know, cool story, bro. But, like, if that's, and no offense, you know, like, if you're in a committed monogamous relationship and you're happy, then I'm a fucking idiot, you know. And, like, if you are a PUA and you're, like, loving it, and you listen to this and you're like, who's fucking Chinese bastard, you know? Yeah, like, I'm just a fucking idiot, right? You know, don't listen to what I'm saying, but, like, just what I'm proposing is, yeah, you know, we can try this kind of a thing, you know, like, where we get our cake and we eat it, essentially. You know, again, like, it's not as ideal as that, you know. There's still challenges, but, like, you know, I think, to me anyway, this kind of thing resonates with me, you know. Like, again, I don't want to be locked in prison for the rest of my life, but I also don't want to be, like, just, like, out there, like, fucking around my whole life either, you know. Like, I want to have sex, bottom line, but I also want to love, and both of these are valid drives within me. So cool. Anyway, that's essentially my perspective for this entry. I hope it was helpful. I don't know if this will ever catch on, but, like, it'd be cool if it did. You know, a companion mate, lover provider. Anyway, if you watch this video, you know, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you very much. And I hope it was insightful for you. And cool, hope you're having a great day. I will catch you in the next entry. Peace out.